What's the most horrifying thing that you have come across in your time on this earth? Case of baby P may come to mind. 17-year-old baby abused, murdered by his own parents, who used to smear his cheeks with chocolate spread to hide the bruises and the cuts they inflicted upon him, as well as make it look as if he had been eating a tasty treat. While he was on a child protection register, he was still left with those parents. Those same parents who beat him so badly. Poor baby P suffered from over 40 injuries, including fractured ribs and a broken back, and left in his cot until he succumbed. Well-known serial killer Ted Bundy, who escaped, who kidnapped and killed dozens of young women, only confessed to 30 of his crimes after his arrest over a decade earlier, and often being described as handsome, charming, charismatic. Maybe Jeffrey Dahmer, well-known serial killer, cannibal, necrophiliac. See, these are a few examples of what you know, public knowledge. A quick Google search and you can read all about these cases, but have you ever asked yourself, what about those cases that I don't know? Now, surely these were solved. They were made public. They must be the tip of the iceberg, right? Right. See, in my line of work, I've come across cases and men, like I've previously stated, and worse. Whether the perpetrators be human or something more nefarious, I'm here to share the tale of some of my investigations. So to start off with, my name is Theodore. You can call me Teddy. There's two aspects of my line of work, the job that I get paid for, such as hunting down cryptids for the government, assisting priests in exorcisms, or stopping hauntings, by either banishing the force involved or laying them to rest. And as for the second part, it may take a bit of explaining. See, I myself am a cryptid. In the paranormal community, individuals like myself are simply called the detached, or just detached. And since we are quite rare, you probably don't know about us. See, all detached used to be normal humans. Our souls are in a sort of limbo between this world and the beyond. And in my case, this happened during a near-death experience when my soul was in purgatory. Some paranormal entity intervened, if you will, and as a result, my soul remains in purgatory between worlds. And because of this, I'm blessed with abilities that are not typically found in the common man. A few of these would be the ability to see spirits, demons, other entities. Another is enhanced regeneration. I can heal broken bones and limbs, cuts and bruises in a matter of minutes to hours. And I can't die. Not until I've resigned myself, until I willingly leave this body and join my own soul in purgatory so that we can pass the threshold between worlds together. Others would be strength, resilience, telepathic communication. See, since my soul is between worlds, not entirely disconnected from me, I can go above and beyond the limitations of this place of existence. Others would be strength, resilience, telepathic communication. Since my soul is between worlds, not entirely disconnected from me, I can go above and beyond the limitations of this plane of existence. As for the reason I'm in my line of work, rest assured, there is a reason which I'm not comfortable sharing here just yet, but I've been doing what I do for over a decade, and as long as I go along with it, I will be making multiple posts in this place explaining my experiences, specific cryptids, spirits, demons, and how to deal with them, and reaching out to other members of the paranormal community to compare and share experiences. Anyway, now that you're caught up, allow me to tell you my first story. This is when I just started out doing what I do, taking place in 2013. Specific locations and names of people involved won't be announced as to retain a semblance of privacy. This is one of the jobs I do on my own, meaning without payment. After nursing a hangover from the previous evening and surfing the web for a couple of hours searching for unsolved homicides, cold cases, etc., I'd found one. In a small backwater town nearby, the remains of a young girl dating back to over 15 years had been found buried in a small clearing. They had neither a name or a specific cause of death for her, although it was speculated that she had taken a blow to the head, evident from a fracture in her skull. The police had literally nothing but an idea of how she died. Feeling satisfied that I had found my next case, I grabbed my gear bag, threw it in the back of my pickup, and headed down the road, figuring I'd start my investigation at the small clearing in which she had been found. Upon arriving, I saw the area was cornered off with police tape, but since nobody was in sight, I crouched under. The moment I entered the area, a cold shiver spread down my spine, assuring me that a tortured spirit was in the area. Hello? Anybody here? My name's Theodore Coulson. I'm here to help. Don't be afraid, I said in my most reassuring voice. You see, most spirits of murder victims, specifically children, tend to be skittish when approached. As you can imagine, going through your own grisly death might be quite traumatizing. It's a job in and of itself to earn that trust. I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a white figure hiding behind a tree, deciding to approach slowly, non-threateningly. I placed my hands to my sides, slightly raised. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to know what happened to you, if that's okay. Getting closer now, I saw streaks of long blonde hair and a single blue eye peering at me from behind the tree. Her gown, more visible now, it was torn and dirty, streaked with blood and dirt. Following her eye, I could see her eyeing up my belt, not knowing whether it was a gun, a knife, or belt itself, which bothered her. I decided to slowly take it off and place it on the ground to further earn her trust. It's okay. I'm one of the good guys, I promise, I said, in a light but firm tone. She began slowly walking out from behind the tree, giving me a better view of her condition. The police reports were right. She had clearly received a hard blow to the head, a bald patch with bits of skin and flesh missing around her left temple, blood staining her face, hair and pieces of torn gown below. She was a young girl, maybe 8 or 9. Pale skin, blue eyes, blonde hair, the remnants of a gown she clutched across her bruised and broken body. Still being pretty new to this line of work, I grimaced once seeing her and began to feel bile rising up in my throat. Attempting to hold down my breakfast and compose myself, I said, "Hey, what's your name?" in a shaky voice. I suppose she could sense the way I felt and the way I spoke, because as a resigned look spread across her face, she looked at the ground. Of course, spirits take the form of the way that they were left upon death, and most either reprise their memories of the event or retain trauma from it, making my job even more difficult. "Now, I have a little girl just like you," I said, in an attempt to help her feel safe. She looked at me with a small glint of optimism in her eyes, smiling. I said, "Yeah, she's with her mother right now. I don't know what we would do if she was wandering around in the woods alone like you are. Maybe your mother would like to know where you are," I said, hoping to find out anything of who she was or who her family might be. She then looked at me with a resigned expression on her face, as if she wanted to say something but just couldn't. She opened her mouth to reveal a missing tongue. I understood. Okay, well, maybe I can follow you and you can show me something. "I'm not leaving you until I've helped," I said, reassuredly. And with that, she pointed in the direction that led deeper into the forest, then started walking towards it. Now, usually I wouldn't follow a spirit into a forest, but my heart went out to this girl, so upon retrieving my belt, I obliged. After around an hour of walking, we came upon a worn-down log cabin that looked like it hadn't been occupied in decades. The girl came to a halt, her body frozen in place as if reliving whatever I assumed had taken place within this cabin. Walking up to her and crouching in front of her so that our eyes met, I said in the calmest voice I could muster, "It's okay. You don't have to go any further. How about I check out this cabin while you wait out here for me to be done?" She nodded enthusiastically as I got up, walking closer to the small structure, peering through the dust and grime-covered windows. It was too dark inside to make anything out. Walking around to the door and trying to open it, I discovered it was locked. "Guess it's a good job I brought my pack along," I muttered to myself. Pulling it off my shoulder and retrieving my crowbar from inside, the door opened without any struggle, and the smell of decades' worth of dust spread throughout the air. Upon entering and retrieving my flashlight, I deduced this cabin was likely used seasonally for hunting, evident from the bear traps, empty ammunition boxes strewn about a table in the center of the room, and a small generator outside and the gas lanterns placed around the room which would illuminate it nicely. There was also a small area towards the back of the cabin, which I assumed was for skinning and gutting animals, considering the black stains across the counter and the floor beneath, which I assumed to be blood. I decided to begin my search of the table, realizing there were cardboard boxes beneath, pulling them out and peering inside. And what I saw still haunts me to this day. Dozens of Polaroids depicting little girls in various states, tied up and bleeding, lying on the butcher's table, with their hands tied, limbs missing, some of them with their heads severed, all blonde-haired, all blue-eyed. Upon seeing this, I shrieked and I threw myself backwards, vomiting across the floor in the process. Whoever the sick, deprived individual who owns this cabin is, it seemed as if the little girl wasn't his only victim. Taking a few minutes to regain my composure, I slowly got to my feet. I took out all the boxes from under the table. I placed them on the surface to see if there was any more evidence. Upon sorting through all the photographs, I noticed singular, handwritten words on the back of each of them, written in black Sharpie. They made no sense. Deciding I would sort through them and attempt to piece things back together back home, I emptied them all in my pack. The next box contained what seemed to be an array of missing persons posters, milk cartons, printed reports, dating back as far as the 80s, from multiple states. My eyes widened. I was clearly dealing with a prolific and as of yet uncaught serial killer who was as of yet uncaught. Preying on mostly children, this man also had a specific type of victim. All prepubescent girls, all with blue eyes, all with blonde hair. Which means he had a motive. Emptying the contents of the second box in my pack, I began sifting through the third and final box. Another sick finding laid within. All of the girls' underwear. With a look of disgust, I searched through them to see if I could find any names embroidered into them, and sure enough, I did. On one of them I saw the name Shannon, as well as a letter placed at the very bottom with an address and a name on it. Dear Mr. Kearney. After taking and folding the letter, I grabbed the box of the underwear and some lighter fluid from the counter. Heading back outside and placing the box down, I squirted the lighter fluid over it and set it alight. It was too sick of a finding to take, or to leave. I then proceeded to walk back around the cabin, back to where the little girl was patiently waiting. Remembering the name I'd seen written on the underwear, as I walked back over to her, I decided to give it a try. Shannon? I said, having my suspicions confirmed when her eyes widened and she nodded. Okay. I think I found out who our guy is. You want to come with me to my place while I go through what I found? I offered. She responded with a short nod, and we walked back to the clearing, entered my vehicle, and headed back home. Once there, I headed straight for my study with Shannon tailing close behind. Emptying my contents of my pack into my desk, I began sifting through the photographs and missing persons. After around 5 minutes, I looked over to see the girl looking over the Polaroids, her attention fixed on one in specific. Her photograph. Hey Shannon, follow me, I said, leading her back into my living room. You want to watch some cartoons while I get work done? I said, turning on the TV. She nodded and sat down on the couch. If you need anything, come grab me, okay? I'll leave my study door open. Switching over the channel of cartoons and retrieving a bottle of whiskey and a glass to take back with me to the study. I'd need it, after all. No sane person could do this sober. Heading back to my study, I remembered the words scrawled on the back of each photograph. Maybe they were each a part of a message, a sentence. So I cleared my desk and took a swig of whiskey straight from the bottle before pouring myself a glass. I got to work reading the words on the back of each photograph. Them, find, hid, I, remains, you'll, the, never. And within a minute, I had a clear message. You'll never find them. I hid the remains. This seemed to be a direct message to law enforcement, or whoever else came looking. If that was so, why would a name and an address be included in the cardboard box? Did he want to be caught? Was it a trap? I had all these questions swirling around in my mind when I heard a knock come from the front door, which snapped me back to reality. I walked into the living room. Shannon was on her feet now, looking worried. I just laughed upon seeing the familiar face of Murph, a fellow detached and investigator like me who I'd worked on a case with a couple of months back. "It's okay, Shannon. It's one of the good guys like me," I said as I answered the door. "Sorry, we don't want to buy any Girl Scout cookies," I said upon opening it. "Ha, very funny," he said, entering the house. You see, Murph is ex-military and wears his medals proudly when he's on a job, along with a beret. "So, who's this?" he said, once he had closed the door and eyed up Shannon, who was once again sat on the couch watching cartoons. "My client, Shannon. She can't talk, though, so don't bother trying. Follow me. I'll show you what I'm working on," I said, leading him out to the hallway and into my study. I offered him a drink, which he accepted, as I explained everything I'd found thus far. "Wow, this is some pretty sick shit. So, girlie in the next room's one of the victims?" he said. "Yep. One of around 50 or so, from what I've seen, dating back decades. I don't know if this guy's still active," I said. A solemn expression spread across my face. "Which reminds me, you still got those buddies in the department? I need some names run." The next few hours we spent mostly sorting evidence, locating of the missing persons and dates. We'd established that he had been targeting young blonde, blue-eyed girls across multiple states from the early 80s, each killing spaced out over about a month or two, running in a straight line across multiple states, starting with Oregon and ending with, well, Shannon, who was abducted in Kansas in the early 90s. After placing the missing posters in the order of time, with the photographs accompanying them, we established that after entering Utah, his victims had begun appearing to be in the cabin that I had explored, meaning the girls abducted from the previous states were brought here to Kansas and slaughtered. The killer clearly had a strategy, since the place even Shannon was abducted from was still pretty far from here. Even if it was within the same state, nobody would come looking for these girls in a forest miles away. Maybe this was how he had avoided capture all these years. After a long evening of establishing a timeline, motive, and piecing together who these girls were and when they were abducted, we decided to call it a night, planning on heading to the address that I'd found the next morning. After a long and restless sleep, plagued with nightmares, I was awoken by Murphy, shaking me. "Got his name. Seamus Kearney. Wake the fuck up, Teddy, come on," he said. I sat up, rubbing my head, attempting to stave the hangover with no such luck. "Right. Tell me all you got on him," I said, curious as to what he discovered. "Get this, man. The guy's record is fucking clean. No previous arrests or infractions with the law. Only thing that stands out is that he went kinda off the grid in the early 90s. No family, no children, nothing. This guy is a literal nobody." This isn't really remarkable, considering most avid killers tend to not want to call attention to themselves when they do what they do. Then you have that entirely different variety, the ones who hide in plain sight, pillars of the community. "And what about the address we've got?" I said. "Still owns it, as far as we can tell. He lives there, still." "Come on, get up, I'll drive," said Murph with his usual sense of enthusiasm. After getting up, I grabbed my pack and began to head out to Murph's car. Shannon trailing close behind us, we decided to pick up breakfast at a diner along the way. Give us time to think about our strategy, provided that he was there and this wasn't a trap. After getting up, I grabbed my pack and began to head out to Murph's car. Shannon trailed close behind us. We decided to pick up breakfast at a diner along the way. Gave us time to think about our strategy. Provided that he was there and this wasn't a trap, we needed to find a way to lay Shannon and all of her fellow victims to rest. I know what you may be thinking, okay, but we couldn't arrest him. That isn't the way these things work. Justice in death and unfinished business either counts on these girls' remains being found, identified, and their families knowing what happened to them, a sincere apology from the killer followed with his own death, or simply their killer suffering just as they did, followed with death. A few of these are unethical, though, and since Seamus had dozens, if not hundreds, of victims, the first would be impossible. That leaves either an apology and his own death, or simply torturing him until he succumbs. Now, considering that we're not batshit fucking crazy, the last one is out, leaving us with the apology, and then killing him. As for what happens to a killer once they die, or what happens to the spirits if not laid to rest, the killer doesn't come back with unfinished business. Black figures we call Moris appear and drag their spirits off. As for what happens afterward, we don't know. But I can't imagine it'd be anything nice. As for victims, if they're not laid to rest over a certain amount of time, their souls begin to degrade. Not meant to be left in this world for so long without a body, they forget all of who they once were. All of who they are, but they're left with one thing on their minds. Vengeance, pain, suffering, anger, and confusion. And when this happens, the only solution is to banish them. Since in this state, they can actually harm the living, and they will do so without discrimination. We call these beings shrieks, since, well, that's what they do. They wander our world screaming and hunting. This is what makes my job so important. Without people like me and Murph, this world would be overrun with such creatures. Anyway, back to the story. Me, Murph, and Shannon continued driving along, entering the town in which the house was located. Anticipation and anxiety began to spread between the three of us. Upon arriving outside the address, we were met with a large but disheveled-looking house, looking like something straight out of the Addams Family. "We know what we're doing, yeah?" said Murph. "We'll simply knock first. Make sure to hide your gun, but keep it accessible. No military talk. We don't want this guy thinking we're narcs. And if he refuses to open up, we break the locks, forcibly enter. You brought the photographs, right?" I said with as serious as a look that I could muster. "Yeah, buddy. I got him," said Murph. "Good. We're gonna get this sick fucker to confess and put a bullet right between his fucking eyes," I said, with a hint of malice in my voice. We reached the doorway, knocked on a large oak door, and waited in anticipation for an answer. Must have been like 4 minutes until we saw some curtains over by the living room window part. One sickly, bloodshot-looking eye staring back at us. "Fuck," muttered Murph, who had been readjusting his holster at the time. "Fuck indeed," I said, as we shared a look, knowing exactly what we had to do now. I kicked the door as hard as I could. The hinges split and it falls into the floor. We were met with a putrid amalgamation of cigarettes, weed, alcohol, and some sickly sweet smell, which we both instantly recognized. Unholstering our weapons, we made a straight beeline into the room where we had seen Seamus in, only to be met with a shotgun pointed right at us. Jumping onto the floor and opening fire, I took his trigger finger off with a single shot, but it was too late. The blast of the shotgun ringing in my ears, I looked over and saw Murph clutching his chest. "Shit!" he yelled out. "Fucking hurt, you prick!" he yelled in the direction of Seamus. And that was when we got a good look at him. Laying on the floor, clutching his hand with blood trickling down it, was the disheveled form of a man. A shell of a human being wallowing in the filth of his living room, with widened bloodshot eyes, filthy silver hair, and unkempt beard spread across his cheeks, wearing clothes that looked as if they hadn't been changed in years. "What the fuck are you?" he slurred, clearly drunk. "The law, motherfucker," uttered Murph. Giving him a look of disapproval, I said, "Really, man?" To which he replied, "Sorry. I always wanted to say that." Getting up, I kicked Seamus's gun away from him. Grabbing the photos from Murph's pack, "You recognize these, you sick fuck?" I said. "So I can do you?" "Speak!" I said in the most aggressive voice I could, but was only met with a look of utter shock and despair on his face. No, I swear to God." "Who are you?" he cried out. "I'm fucking sure you don't," I said, heading back out of the room. "Keep an eye on this fucker," I said to Murph. He nodded as I headed out to retrieve Shannon, bringing her in the room with me, with a look of fear spread across her face as she jumped back, a small scream leaving her lips as she was met with her killer. This confirms all my suspicions. Now I know exactly how I'm going to get his heartfelt apology. I looked back to Seamus lying on the floor with a confused and terrified look on his face. "Apologize. Apologize right fucking now, and we'll go easy on you," he said. "Apologize for what? I swear! You guys have the wrong guy," he uttered. I said, heading out into the hallway and down into the basement stairs. Upon descending them, the putrid aroma grew stronger. I grabbed my flashlight and clicked it on. As I was met with the corpses of over a dozen children in different states of decomposition and dismemberment, I see their spirits standing around the room, some of them staring directly at me, all of them with that same look of despair as I bent over and lost my breakfast across the stairs. A couple of children approached me, retaining the same injuries their corpses had, all of them blue eyes, blonde-haired little girls. After regaining as much composure as I could, I noticed I'd begun crying. "Who are you, mister?" uttered one of the children. "I'm one of the good guys," I said in my teary tone. "We're laying you guys to rest, so please follow me if you can," I said, as half the group followed me up the stairs. As I entered the living room once again, followed by children, I looked Seamus in the eye. He knew I'd seen his little slaughter room downstairs. "I'm sick. I'm sick. Please take me in. You guys are cops, right? Take me in, buddy. I need help," he said in desperation. I simply shook my head in refusal, not even blinking. I looked over at him, placing my hand at his temples as his eyes rolled back into his skull. I saw everything. I saw all of his past, all of what he'd done. I hated doing this, peering into the minds of sick individuals. Suddenly knew his motive. I knew why he'd done what he'd done. I almost felt myself feeling sorry for the man. But I caught myself. As a child, Seamus had a 13-year-old babysitter named Maya. She had blonde hair. She had blue eyes. When his parents went out on a date, she would take him into his bedroom, undress them both, and you can guess what happened after that. Seamus, upon reaching the age of 10, went alone with her in his bedroom, tried to refuse what she was doing to him, her getting forceful, and began to hurt him, and as a response he hit her over the head with a toy he managed to grab from the floor, and he didn't stop. He just didn't stop until her brains were paste. He killed her. Coming from a rich family, Seamus's parents covered it up, but evidently his trauma grew to become obsession. That's why he'd done what he did. The telepathic ability us detached or blessed with allowed us to allow others to tap into our abilities. I used this feature to bless Seamus with a sight, so that he could see his victims gathered around him in an attempt to receive his heartfelt apology. Upon seeing them, his eyes widened. He screamed and crawled into the corner as his victims began approaching him. "Help! Help! Fucking help, please!" he screamed, still not apologizing. His victims simply stared at him. Seamus jumped across the floor, retrieved his shotgun, and before we could stop him, blew out his own brains all across the wall behind him. Me and Murph looked at each other with shock, believing our efforts to have been in vain. There was no way to retrieve an apology from Seamus now. Meaning, these girls were stuck here, until we could identify who they were and tell any families they may have. But then, he appeared. Seamus's ghost, half his face missing. He looked at us as if to say, "What the fuck?" And then we heard it. The nearing moans of the Morries coming to claim Seamus. They raised up from the ground, moaning, these specters of pitch blackness, grabbing Seamus by his arms and legs as he tried to fight them off, screaming as best he could, with half of his face missing. Seamus was dragged back underground, and with that, he was gone, left to face his fate at the hands of the Morries. Thinking it was over, me and Murph began preparing to search the house when a doorway appeared. A doorway of pure light. As it turns out, allowing Seamus to see the girls had constituted as torture, and him killing himself had sealed his fate. The girls began walking towards and through the doorway, all of them now wearing white dresses, their injuries seemingly healed. All of them had entered except for Shannon, who just looked at me with a smile. "Thank you, Teddy," she said to me, waving at me and Murph before stepping through the doorway herself. "We need to get fucking drunk," I heard Murphy mutter to me. "Yeah, man. Let's go," he said as we left the building. And there you have it. The conclusion to this first story you'll be seeing of mine. My first serial killer I'd encountered. The ironic thing is that despite the fact that I'd hunt cryptids for a living, Seamus was the first real monster I'd ever met, and the worst of them, too. Cryptids mostly hunt for food or based on instinct. Seamus had done it out of pure malice. Excluding his babysitter, he never needed to kill. Yet he had, because he wanted to. I've seen a lot of shit in my life, you know. I've been in a lot of messed up situations, but nothing haunts me quite like that basement. Those photographs that I'd found. Those poor girls. Anyway, I have a cryptid to hunt. Gotta keep food on the table and some malt liquor in my stomach, right? I'll be posting about the next job I'm doing as soon as I can, as well as another job I worked on in my past. So, until next time, my friends. Good evening once again, kids. It's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I want to tell you thank you for watching tonight's video, or for listening to tonight's episode of the podcast that's available on Spotify, or on Apple Music, or on any other places that you can get podcasts. If you guys have loved any of the series you've been hearing on the channel, such as the Neverglade Mysteries, My Tiny Town Has Just Been Put on Lockdown, or Tales from the Gas Station, and you've wondered if there's more, there is. Take a look on Amazon. All these authors and many more have books available on Amazon right now, and some of them I've even done the audiobooks for. Check them out now, see if you can pick up a novel or two, and let them know that I sent you. As always, I want to give a big thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon. You guys are the real MVPs, and you allow us to get a whole bunch of custom stories that are only heard here on this channel, on this podcast. So, a very big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Stephanie Butler, Bobby Karman, Tristain Pelton, Chase Burnett, Diana Kraus, Maria Walker, Tonya Oran, Paingravy, Inactive Hermit, Austin Johnson, Crazy Kid, MrMarcusBlitz, Aika Limchoc, Dirt Diver 030, Matt Bach, Jabbles Raz, Voiceofsand, Coffee Zombie, Matthew McNeese, ChellyJay, Jeremy H, raltizal, PhycoMel, Nana, TheMorrigan, Nick Weaver, MeltedLake, Tali Sue, SkyMara Ravenswood, William King, Reaper 61167, Darth Miver, Micah Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Nessie, Parafa Panda, Bardo Hawk 764, Lambda M98, Harley, Billy Morrow, Sashi Suzaku, My Body Sounds Like Rice Krispies, Miss Xander, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Azarine Fox, Freddy Krueger, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Hades' Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Tommy Green, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Trey Smiles, and Corey Kenshin. And of course, everybody who's down there in the description as well, and everybody who can support on patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta for even $1. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for listening, and sweet dreams.